Hello, everyone. This is Steven and Brian back with another episode of our new podcast where we're here to talk about more of the process of custom home building. So thanks again for tuning in. This is week number 2 and episode number 2 of the podcast, and we're excited to be back. This week we've got a really cool and special episode for you guys. We're going to drop some golden nuggets on basically just what is a custom home, right? We're going to talk more about that and if that's something that seems right for you. Right? Is that something that you're interested in or even want to dive into? And that's exactly what this podcast is for. So we want to start there and just define what that even means, and then be able to elaborate on that throughout the rest of the episodes and really overall this whole podcast. So Brian, you want to introduce us?
Absolutely. We most importantly, for the listeners that listened to episode 1 first, I'm pleased to say we have held ourselves accountable, like we said we would do, or had hoped we would, from the end of episode 1. To Stephen's point, we really just want to start at the very basics, right? So let's start from the very beginning. What is a custom home? We'd like to address that, and then just some other early on, very preliminary questions that come up in your mind if you're even considering thinking about building a custom home in the near future. So let's start there. What is a custom home, Stephen?
Yeah. Yep. That's a great place to start. And with that question in mind, so I'll just tell you briefly what I believe is a custom home. You tell me the same, and then we'll compare that to what Collins Dictionary has to say about what a custom home is. So for me, I would say a custom home is something that is truly designed and spec'd out per the client or the homeowner or the customer's wants and needs, basically. So all that to say that, you can pick every last detail of the home in a custom home, right? And of course, most builders are going to provide their input to help guide the process, but it truly is custom, right? So if somebody wants to do a pier and beam foundation versus a concrete foundation, that's something that can be worked through. But yeah, it's truly just every aspect of the home is built and designed with the client in mind.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think my definition of a custom home is a home that is specifically designed with the intent to only be built one time and have unique characteristics around exterior and interior finish outs and selections. Something that is truly designed that fits the particular the wants and the type of person and of that homeowner, right? And how they want to represent themselves in their home. So, what's the dictionary say?
Oh, well, I like what you said there, that it is a home that's only built once, and that's so true because every single home is unique in how it's built. I mean, we could build the exact same floor plan literally in the same neighborhood, but it's going to be a different home just based on the land and the dirt that it's specifically built on. So that's a really good point. So Collins Dictionary says that custom built homes is if something is custom built, it is built according to someone's special requirements. Pretty vague, but that's the whole definition from them. So basically what we elaborated more on, but it's truly something that's custom tailored to the client or the buyer.
Yeah, and we bring this up and start there because there are other terms in the industry like semi-custom, soft custom, and while there's probably different understandings of what those terms mean across different builders and different markets, we see semi-custom or soft custom as a home that has probably or will be built more than once, but there are minor or smaller structural changes that are allowed to be made to a base floor plan. So maybe that's moving some walls, maybe that's extending the footprint to add another room. There's a balance. It does more than a production builder that you can't make any changes to any structural pieces of it, but you're not going full custom where you're literally starting with an architect on pen and paper or a computer program and saying, what do you want this house to be?
Awesome. Yeah, I really like that distinction that you just broke down. I think maybe the way that we could also break this down too for the listeners is thinking about any homes or the home scale or spectrum. I would say at the very base or kind of entry level, I would even say maybe modular or mobile homes since they're factory built. They're all mass produced in a factory. So those would probably be at the base there, as far as affordability and just speed and everything else. Going slightly up from that, I would say is probably production homes. They're production homes that are in production neighborhoods. They're super easy to build. And they come up a lot quicker because they're recycling floor plans and they've got, all the same stuff basically being used over and over and over in those houses. So that's production. Going one step up from that, like you touched on, soft custom or semi-custom would be the next step up where similar to production homes, but you can change some things here and there. I want to add a room or I want to change this game room to a bedroom, little things like that. You can change all your selections, where some production builders only give you choice A, B, and C, right? And then on the very top or the high end of the spectrum would be full custom. And that's what we're referring to here is full custom. So this podcast, like we said, is going to be tailored towards that full custom crowd, maybe even slightly towards the semi-custom or soft custom crowd, but mostly it's going to be for those people seeking truly customizing and designing their next home. So yeah, that's really good distinctions there.
So if we continue on that path of a custom home, there's builders out there that talk about design and build. What is design and build?
Oh yeah, yep, another great distinction to make. So breaking that down, I mean, there's builders or custom builders that just do custom builds. The way that looks first is going to be basically somebody will have a lot. They'll go to an architect. They'll start working with an architect, and the architect will guide them through the process from an architect's point of view. They'll give them the look and the shape and the layout and all the fun things that they want in the home. But a lot of times that way of going about it doesn't account for a builder's perspective on that design. So that's just one thing. So some of these custom home builders that are truly just custom builders, not design build, that's kind of how they're handling that. Now, design build is another ballgame where the design build groups or companies will work with the clients from the very beginning, ideally, and connect them with either their preferred architects or architects on staff or a third-party architect that the clients or the buyers already want to work with. But the builder offers their perspective as they're going through that design process. So it's really an advantageous model, and that's why we offer that. But we're, partial to it, but that we've seen success in both realms. We see that design build is a little bit more successful just because it's more transparent and it takes into account everybody's perspective, the client, the architect, and the builder all at the same time, so that you're much more informed as you're going through the design process on budget and cost savings and value engineering things. I think that's a big topic that we'll cover later. But value engineering is kind of a hot or a buzzword, if you will. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think? That sum it up pretty well.
Yeah, I think that does sum it up well, and that is a huge piece. Value engineering. We'll set up a whole separate podcast probably just to discuss that in more detail. But I think you're right. We find that there is more success with better overall experience for the homeowners if they work with and engage a builder sooner rather than later. And a lot of builders will tell you a lot of different things, but there's a lot of things that can be decided on early on to ultimately save time and money and get you what you want or expect in your dream home.
Yep. Yeah. And I think to add on to that, it all goes back to expectations, right? And the problem with not being a design build firm or a client going directly to an architect is they want everything under the sun, right? They tell their architect that they want a 6,000 square foot home. They design everything and they fall in love with it. And then they go consult with the builder, and the builder tells them, hey, you know what? I love what you've designed. Here's what it's going to cost. And they have this big lump in their throat. They've got to, swallow that pride in the design that they just built. and fell in love with, and then they've got to kind of go, usually, right? This isn't all the time, but this is just what we've seen from experience. So that's why it's always good to get builders' insight before you go through the design phase or during the design phase, so that you have a lot more clarity on that design and what the build's going to look like overall from a budget perspective and even feasibility. Sometimes these architects design some really cool things that builders have seen before that they say, man, it looks great, but it's not practical. We're not going to be able to build that, right? Um, engineers not going to stamp off on that. So anyways, yeah, it's a connection and it's teamwork. And that's why design build in our experience is usually a better dynamic.
Yep. No, you talk about the feasibility. That is a huge piece. It really is. I mean, you can do a lot of things on a computer, but actually to bring it to life, there's some realities that have to be addressed. And we've seen it on every single house we have ever built, custom home that we've built, that there are things in the plans from the architect that when you get in the field and you're constructing the house, as minor as they may be, it's oh, hey, that doesn't work that way. When you get to that point, and oh, we need to make some changes, oftentimes very minor, but that's just part of the process, and we try to eliminate as much of that as we can as early on as possible.
For sure.
So,
And I want to add real quick, just so that we're fully informing our listeners, that when you're shopping or seeking a builder, right, they may not specifically state that they're a design build company, but that's a question that you should ask them if they're willing to be or are open to being involved in your design process, right? Please go seek a builder for their insight while you're going through the design phase. We'll leave it at that it's going to save a lot of heartache when you come to shop around for a builder. So even if it's not the builder that's going to be the actual one building the home, you still want to have some building consultation going on during the design phase, just so that you're not just building or designing blindly and then seeking builder advice later. So just my 2 cents.
yep, good, great point. So a lot of people are trying to decide if building a custom home makes sense for them. So oftentimes they're looking at how long is this going to take? How much is this going to cost me? And what do I want? Right. And I think those three questions cover a lot, and they cover the vast majority of where people start and say, is this something I want to pursue? So let's talk about time for a second. I mean, the answer to a lot of questions always is it depends. But what can people expect from a time perspective to build to design and build a custom home?
That's a great question, right? I think that's probably a question we get almost most often. It's one of our top three questions, I would say. The other one being, what's my home going to cost, right? Like you said, we're here to try to break that boundary or break that barrier of it depends. But unfortunately, it really does, right? Any home is going to have its specific challenges, or not even challenges, but just uniqueness that takes a certain amount of time, right? And every single home, like we mentioned with custom building, is on its unique lot. It's got its unique floor plan and footprint, and it's got its own unique design characteristics as well. So with all those things being pulled together, it's nearly impossible to give a price and a timeline. But let's talk generally here, just to give people an idea, right? What we've seen on just kind of a typical standard custom home build, right? We're not talking 20,000 square feet in the center of New York City or, something crazy, right? We're talking just a fairly regular build. I would say you can bank on probably 4 to even 8 months of planning sometimes, just architects, designs, and permitting and engineering and all the things that come pre-construction wise. So yeah, I would say anywhere from 4 to 8 months on, kind of just on an average, right? And then as far as the build, I mean, as soon as the builder starts breaking ground on that lot and starts building the home that you want to build, it could be anywhere from 6, 8 months on the really quick end if it's a fairly simple, not super complex custom build, all the way up to 16, 18 months plus if it's something that's pretty elaborate and is going to require a lot of builder input and a lot of trades and resources. So I don't know. I'd love to hear your opinion on that too, because I mean that's just what I think you and I have seen as we're getting into this. But like we said, it just depends. So
And it's a tough question, as simple as it may be to answer. And of course, it's going to be answered in ranges because there's too many variables that are often unknown when you get that question. But the other important point to make is people often underestimate or have the expectations that what we'll call the pre-construction design, planning, and site prep time will be faster than it actually is, including permits. I mean, there's a whole slew of tasks that need to be completed before you ever even start moving. What I like to say, start moving any bit of dirt. And I know you mentioned 4 to 8 months. That is doable, but it's not uncommon to easily see that push out to a year just in planning and prep work, which can be deflating. It really can, but it's all about setting the right expectations early on. That if it is a custom home, there's a lot of prep work that goes into getting it ready to go before you can actually start seeing it come to life.
hmm yep. And I think as we get more into this podcast and talk about some more details, but we'll see that we call it slowing down to speed up, right? Or taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I mean, whatever you want to call it, but we slow down to speed up. So slowing down during that pre-construction or design phase, spending the time to thoroughly go through the plans and go through all the specifications that the clients want, budget everything out and go get quotes and bids on all that stuff. That's something that, I mean, we'll be honest, a lot of builders don't do, and then it ends up biting people in the end, right? Or as they're going through the construction phase. It can be a painful process for that reason, because they were quick to jump the gun and get the house started so that people start seeing progress and they're excited. And then sure enough, they run into things that they didn't account for, didn't budget for because of poor planning, right? So, that's just a little tidbit on that, you can spend a great deal of time planning properly in order to speed up and make the build much smoother and budget friendly, stick to a budget, and also, have better quality throughout that as well.
Yep. Good stuff. So let's shift the discussion briefly to uh, the finances and the cost and the budget, right? That's another point that we mentioned that people want to know early on before wasting any time. Can I afford what I would like or what I want? So um, where do we begin? That's probably a whole a whole podcast in itself. But let's start with this. There's um, it's even more variable when we talk about how much it costs to build this home. But let's start with the different types of contracts that builders can get into with you as the homeowner. Really, there's two main types of contracts. There's fixed price and cost plus as the predominantly used contracts to build custom homes. So, Stephen, you want to walk us through what those look like and some of the pros and cons?
Yeah, yep, for sure. And I mean, like you hinted at, I think these are good topics that we can build on more on future episodes, but it's good to mention them now as people are diving into our podcast and getting some broad knowledge at these beginner episodes or beginning episodes. And as they're going through that process potentially of seeking a custom builder. So yeah, that's definitely something good to hit on, is the two different or main types of building contracts. Now, I'm sure there's others out there, builders that have worked with legal teams to develop their own contracts, but the ones that most builders in our experience use are going to come down to one of two. And one of those is a fixed price contract. The other one is going to be a cost plus contract. And yeah, I'll jump into what each of those entail real briefly, and then on a future episode we'll definitely get more into the weeds on those two, because that's a pretty big and pretty heavy topic. So definitely worthy of another conversation. But on a fixed price contract, kind of just to sum it up, is going to be where, um, a builder is willing to go out and do the legwork most times, or they've built so many in that particular area that they feel confident enough to quote a fixed price contract. And what that is it's the builder coming to terms and coming to an agreement with the client before the build even starts, of saying, here is the price that it is going to cost to build all of your specifications, your particular floor plan on your particular lot. We can do that for X dollars, right? Some people do it by price per square foot. Other people do it as just a full lump sum, like, hey, it's going to be $500,000 total, right? Or $1 million total. So that would be a fixed price contract in very layman's terms. And then a cost plus contract is going to be a little different, where basically the builder and the client agreed to a rough estimate going into the build. They don't do as much legwork. They kind of just go off of historical data and what they've seen building a couple homes in the area, or in other areas even. Some builders just kind of shoot from the hip, and they'll throw out a number and say, and sometimes it's not very thrown out, right? Sometimes it's much more calculated. So it depends on the builder and time frame, and is inflation running rampant or not. But cost plus is basically agreeing to say, look, we believe your home is going to cost X dollars. And we're proposing that we'll build it and do all of our building stuff for it, or the management of it, for a percentage on top of that. That is the plus, right? So the cost plus the builder's fee on top of each of those individual costs. So that'll give you your total price, and you can see all your costs coming through. It's a very open book format. And it's another way to build homes, right? And some people like it, some people don't. There's pros and cons to each, right? So I don't want to feel like I'm leaning towards one or the other. We can definitely cover those pros and cons in that later episode that we keep referencing. So what about you, Brian? What do you think on those?
There's so much to that. So yeah, for the sake of time, we won't get into all the details, because it certainly deserves its own section. But I think that the point is to make you as a homeowner or potential homeowner aware of the differences, and that you can intelligently go into conversations with builders early on and ask them the right questions, right? And of course, it's ultimately up to you to make the decision on what you're most comfortable with, whether that's fixed price or cost plus or some other contract that is signed by all parties. So again, absolutely some significant, important pros and cons on both sides. And it really, we'll touch on this as we wrap up, but it really just comes down to having the right level of trust and confidence in the builder that you ultimately choose, right? I mean, I hate to sound so vague and subjective, but uh, there's no right or wrong. It's you just really having that trust to move forward with. I am confident and believe that this builder is going to get this done for what they say they're going to, just in terms of expectations, quality, price, time, all the above.
Yep. Yep. And
So
yeah, I want to touch on just some quick things there, but on those contracts, I'll say that from our experience, most of those contracts are coming from promulgated forms or promulgated contracts. So pre-existing, just kind of fill in the blank contracts is um, my synopsis of promulgated forms, if you're not familiar with those. But promulgated contracts from the local home builders associations that your builder is most likely a part of or has connections to, and they acquire those either fixed price or cost plus contracts through those. So they're fairly common, is what I'm getting at. And if you see a contract that is not promulgated or not from a local building association, definitely worth digging into a little bit more, right? Just do your due diligence, do your research, and make sure you know exactly what you're getting into and what you're signing. Be very aware of that, right? And especially if a builder has hired their own legal team or lawyer to draft up their own contracts. I'm no lawyer, this is not legal advice, but you should definitely do your own due diligence on any contract you're signing. So this is just our take and our experience in the industry, but definitely consult a legal team on, or a legal consultant on any contract you're going to sign. So yeah, and also I want to mention too that even on both of those contracts, anything that changes once things have been signed off on or throughout the build, those are what we'll talk about as change orders. And I think a lot of people may be familiar with change orders, but change orders can be very few or a lot, and they can be very small to very big, right? So change orders is another topic that we can cover much more in future episodes. So yeah.
So last question around just a high level financial question, I think, is people are still just early on considering where they may want to go. How much money can someone expect to spend before construction actually begins? I think, and to not answer this as it depends, uh, let's, I think we can answer it in terms of a percentage of what the total cost of that project may be. But I think that there's a lot of homeowners out there that think uh, they're their expectations are that they're not going to spend as much money as they actually do in terms of the early stages, like the architect, clearing the lot, doing things before you may actually even have a construction loan if that's how you're going to finance your build, right? So I think it's important to just set those expectations that it can be quite a bit of money, to the tune of Stephen. You tell me if you agree or disagree, but I think anywhere between 2 to 5%, maybe more, just in of the total cost of the build, just in costs or cash that you are spending before you even obtain a construction loan or financing for the rest of the build.
That's a good one. And I'm glad you brought that up on this podcast as people are making those initial decisions on whether a custom home build is right for them or not, because that is a really, really good point that people that go into it thinking that they're going to pay 100% out of their construction loan, or they're going to seek financing for all of it, or they don't think that it's going to be that expensive or whatever, right? People go into it with all kinds of misconceptions, and that's what we're here to clear up. But I would 100% agree that it always ends up being more than people initially intend to spend, and not because of mistakes or anything else, right? Even builders being fully transparent, it just happens to be more than I think most people realize they're going to spend on getting right. Just the planning phase of the house can cost anywhere from probably 2 to 5%. So if we're talking $1 million home, it's not uncommon to see somebody $20,000 to $50,000 usually out of pocket in expenses just to get to that starting line.
And what's
And
included?
sometimes people.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Okay. Now just to finish my point, but sometimes people do take out construction loans earlier and they're able to pay some of those preliminary costs with that construction loan, but it's all part of your overall cost towards the build. I want to say that. So don't think of it as extras, but it's just stuff that really needs to be addressed and most often paid for up front before you even get to a point where you know exactly what you're going to build, right? Because you don't know your floor plans until you paid an architect. You don't know your engineering, what that looks like and what that's going to cost until you paid an engineer. You don't know what your design and all that stuff's going to be unless you choose to pay an interior designer, or you can see where there's a lot of things, even permitting and architectural review committees, they have fees, to get through all of that. And finally, like you say, start moving dirt, is a lot of tasks. And, it requires a lot of legwork from a lot of people, and, money is time, as we say. So, yeah. What were you going to say though?
No, you answered my question. I was just going to say we talk about the cost, but what are those costs? And you nailed it. So engineering, architects, I think you covered the bulk of them. And yeah, it's just important to know that and have that expectation set as early as you possibly can, that it's not cheap. No matter how much your budget is, there's a lot of money that has to be dished out up front to get started.
For sure. Well, I hate to cut this off because this has been a pretty value packed episode already. But I'm just super excited, and I know we're coming up probably over our 25-minute time that we mentioned. So, yeah. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, I hope that we have shared some good tidbits of information, and certainly piqued your interest for diving into a lot of these topics in much more detail in subsequent episodes. I mean, there's just so much to talk about from all these different aspects, and we've learned a lot, some the easy way, some the hard way, and that's what we want to share with you. So Now looking forward to it. And like I said at the beginning, hopefully we have a name for this podcast before episode 3. So let's not say hopefully, let's say we will.
Yeah, we will. We will. We'll decide on something, and even if it changes in the future, so be it. But yeah, yeah, this is the start of many more episodes to come, and a lot more information. And just like you said, to sum this episode up, we've thrown a lot out there. But if nothing else, hopefully it opens listeners' eyes to at least go and do some more research on it. Right? Go do some Google searches on some terms that we mentioned, like fixed price, cost plus contracts, whatever else. This is to just kind of plant the seed, and hopefully this is going to be the foundation of more things that we are going to talk about and put out more content on. Hopefully we'll have blog posts and other